Welcome to Real Talk with Sterling Real Estate Group, your go-to podcast for all things real estate related. Each episode, we break down the latest market trends, share insider tips, and bring in local industry experts to offer valuable insights that empower your journey. Whether you're buying, selling, building, or investing, we're here to help you navigate the ever-changing landscape with clarity and confidence. Let's get real about real estate. Welcome to Real Talk at Sterling Real Estate Group. Today, I'd like to welcome Drew Aiello, branch manager with Fairway Mortgage Corporation. Welcome, Drew.
Thank you for having me to your inaugural podcast.
Right? So I'm going to jump in here, and I'm sure you're going to appreciate this. We go back, 25 years?
Yes, I've been in this industry now 30 years.
Yep, and I'm 26. And do you remember when we were doing Showcase of Homes and you invited me on your radio station and I got in there and I chickened out and I walked out?
I remember that day like it was yesterday.
Yeah.
I don't know what I did yesterday, but I remember that day.
Yeah. Yeah.
Lisa started walking into the radio studio and got hives.
I did.
Your neck, everything started getting red. And I kept walking. I turned around, she was gone. I'm like, where did Lisa go? She left the building.
Yep. And guess what? Look at here we are today. Completely comfortable, relaxed. So
Well, that was when you were 26 years old. Now
Yeah.
you're 30. So you've matured.
29. Well, great. So Drew, today, right, we're talking about understanding mortgage rates, affordability, and some market trends. So
it's going to be, I think, a very interesting year. There's obviously a lot going on the political side.
Right.
A lot going on with the Federal Reserve. Now we're, 5 years past COVID.
Right.
So still unwinding all that money that was pumped into the system.
Yep.
That we had to deal with inflation over the last few years. So there's a lot.
There's a lot. We thought last year was going to be a tricky year. So
It's been like this now probably a few years, right?
Yeah.
I would say.
Yeah.
But
2024, we were just warming up. Yeah. 2025, hold my beer.
Right. Just survive till 2025.
Yeah.
So here we are.
Yeah. Great. So a couple questions for you. What factors should buyers keep an eye on that could influence their buying decision?
In terms of, I think the biggest thing that I get is the rate.
Right.
And what can I afford? Obviously, at the max you can afford is $350, better than anyone. You got to look at $275, $300.
Right.
Because you're going to end up at $350.
Right. Yeah.
So I think buyers get afraid of affordability. There's multiple offers. Super competitive.
Oh, yeah, it is.
Right?
Yeah.
That's not going away anytime soon.
Right.
So I've been telling buyers, especially first-time buyers, is to get what we call a cash guarantee. We have
That's a phenomenal program. Yeah.
Just because you have to, if you're looking at 8 offers, everybody has a pre-approval.
Right.
You have to kind of raise your game, unless you can pay cash, obviously.
Right.
You have to raise your game, kind of stand out from the competition. So might as well get a cash guarantee, which is a full underwrite by us, our underwriting team, not just Drew Aiello.
Right. You're under
Full
Fairway, right? Yeah.
They apply for a mortgage on a house they don't have yet, and we issue a full-blown commitment letter.
Yeah,
So
I've used it with you.
It's tremendous.
Yeah.
And it tells the seller, hey, these people have 0 outstanding items. We need an appraisal. We need title. We can close.
In the clear to close, and off they go. 30 days, right? Or less than 30 days.
You could close in 15 days.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I tell buyers, because it's super competitive, it's not going to change anytime soon. We're going to talk about the demographics with the millennials and the Gen Zs.
Yep.
And it's basic. I went to college. I was an economics major. Economics 101 right now. Supply, demand.
Yeah.
There's way more demand than there is supply.
And we're obviously talking about more of the resale market. And I think that's why, we do a lot of new construction here. That's why buyers now are gravitating to the new construction.
Right.
Because they're not competing. Right.
It
Which
helps,
is.
You can take your time.
Right.
You can look at 54 plans and
Yeah.
figure out which one.
Pick your granite, pick everything. But, the beauty of that, they get to personalize, the brand new home. So
100%.
that's great. So, can you break down mortgage rates for us? Typically, I don't know, the 10-year treasury yield, and what does the current forecast suggest?
Right. So for the average person listening to this, you're not going to look at mortgage-backed securities. That's something that I look at every day. But the average person can't find that on CNBC or the internet or what have you.
What is that? Talk about
mortgage-backed securities is really what drives mortgage rates.
Okay.
That is it. But 90% of the time, you could look at the 10-year treasury. That's easy. Anybody can watch that on their phone, internet. So I say to the general public, look at the 10-year treasury and then add 2.25 or 2.5% over that 10-year.
Good information.
That's basically what a 30-year mortgage rate would look like.
Okay.
So for the average person that wants to look quick and find that out, I have CNBC on my phone all the time. Just look at that. So during the last few years, it got a little out of whack. Like we saw rates at 8.25.
Yeah.
2 Octobers ago. We saw 7.25, 7.5 just 3 months ago.
Right. Now what? We're 6.66 or so? Yeah.
Now we're like mid sixes, low sixes. I would say 6 3/8 to 6 5/8. Various, and depending on the day. But that 10-year treasury versus that mortgage rate was really expanded. It was about 3 or 3.25 over the 10-year treasury.
Okay.
That's when we saw those higher rates.
Right.
And now the markets, like we were talking about before this podcast, everything's kind of coming back to normal. That's why I'm hoping this year is a very defining year with mortgage rates. I still think real estate's going to be out of balance, meaning still way more buyers than sellers.
Exactly.
But I'm hoping that mortgage rates kind of come back in line. So
let's hope.
That's normal. Like 2.25, 2.5 over the 10-year is somewhat typical over the last 30 years. That's usually what it's been.
Okay.
So we see deviations of that, but that's
right. So that's good information because I think the average buyer wouldn't know to look at that.
Yeah, everybody's like, "What's your rate? What's your rate? I don't know. Can I lock in a rate? Can't lock in a rate till you find a house."
Right. Yeah.
But today's rate is X.
Yeah. We're not sure what tomorrow will be.
Right.
That's great. Let's see what else we have here for you. If the Fed lowers rates 4 times this year, how quickly might that impact the mortgage rates for home buyers?
I think that'll have a very good impact. Right now, this is very interesting. This is kind of behind the curtain information in the sense that the Fed right now is saying 2 times.
Okay.
Right? End of last year, they were saying 4.
4.
Then they reduced it to 2. Bond markets didn't like that.
Right.
So we saw a spike in interest rates. And now, thank goodness, over the last 7 weeks, rates have steadily come down. Which is good. So if the Fed, right now, out of all the Fed members, 14 of them see 2 cuts. So the key driver in all this on how interest rates go lower into 2025 is the unemployment market. 14 of these Fed members also think the unemployment rate is going to stay at about 4.2. Right now, it's about 4.2 right now.
Right.
So if the unemployment rate all of a sudden goes to 4.4, 4.5, then you have 14 Fed members saying, oops, I might have messed up on our predictions. And so then that 2 cuts goes to 4 cuts.
Okay.
And that, I think, will really move rates lower.
Yeah.
When I say, you're not going to go down a point, but if we can get close to 6% in 2025,
that would be great.
5 3/4, I would say on the lowest end, 6 1/8. Hopefully on the high end, I think that's probably what we could expect in 2025. We hit 5 3/4 end of last year, or not October of last year, like 2 weeks. And I don't know if you know this, but the buyers came out of the woodwork. Yeah. We started seeing 5 on interest rates.
Yeah. And then they shot back up.
And then they shot back up to like 7 1/4.
Yeah.
It's inflation.
It's interesting that you say, they're predicting 2 rate cuts. So every year in January, I go to New York City to the big Inman conference.
Right.
And, it's a who's who in real estate, CEOs, presidents. And when I was there in 2023, they were, dead on predicting the market for 2024. So this past January, when I was there, they are predicting 2 rate cuts. Okay. So it'll be interesting, obviously nobody has a crystal ball, but it will be interesting to see if, again, they're accurate.
Right. And then there's the Fed looks at unemployment. The Fed looks at inflation. And I think out of the key catalysts to lower rates is that unemployment.
Rate.
So if you had to focus on one metric, look at the unemployment rate. I think that's going to be the driver if we can get lower rates. I think inflation's coming down. Yeah. Right now we're at 2.8. The Fed wants us to be at 2. You hear that number all the time.
Right.
Actually, we have a big inflation report coming out Friday.
Interesting. Yeah.
That'll be the Fed's favorite gauge of inflation. And one thing with the Fed, they look at the rental market as a 6-month history of the rental market. They don't look at the rental market in real time. And rents are about 43% of that inflation report. So if they looked at rents in real time, our inflation rate is probably much lower than 2.8, which is good. So my point is, once it catches up, so I see inflation coming down. Unemployment market, we'll have to see.
Yeah.
So we'll have the same conversation a year from now.
Yeah. We'll see. We'll see if your predictions and Emmons' predictions, are correct. Let's see here. Are there opportunities right now for buyers to buy the dip, as you like to say, correct, on interest rates, or should they wait for further movement? We hear that a lot. I'm going to wait until rates come down. And I know you have some interesting information on that.
I think that's the worst thing you could do.
Yeah.
I personally do. And not just because I'm in the mortgage business. I just look at statistics and I look at demographics.
Right.
If you're a plumber, if you're an electrician, if you're a contractor, if you sell widgets, you have to look at demographics. Your demographics is your destiny.
Right.
That's where you're going. So we look at the demographics right now. We have 70 some odd million millennials. We have, I think, 68 million Gen Zers.
Yeah.
They're not going away.
Right.
They're going to be buying houses. And so we're going to have this imbalance with demand versus supply for many years to come. So what happens? You have a house on the market. You have 8 offers. It's going to get bid up over asking price. And you're going to pay more for that house than it's listed for.
Right.
That's not going to stop. So let me ask you a question. When rates are 6.5, that's how it is.
Right.
When rates go to 5.5, it's going to exacerbate the problem.
Yes.
So buy now is my theory, because I'd rather buy a $400,000 house for $400 versus next year or 2 years from now where it's going to be $440.
Right.
Like if you get 4 or 5% this year, 4 or 5% next year, all right, there's 10% over the next 2 years.
Right. Yeah.
Now that house is worth $40,000 more. So buy it now. Forget about interest rates. You can always refinance.
And do you offer a package, right?
Yes.
To refinance with the higher rates.
Right. We give people a closing cost credit of about $1,500.
Which is great.
When they refinance. So if they bought last year, the year before, this year, and they're going to refinance when rates dip, yes, we try to help them out as best we can.
And what percentage do you suggest if someone, last year bought a house? What percentage rate do you think they should call you to refinance their home?
We monitor this pretty closely. Okay. So we let people know, but we are in New York State. We have New York State mortgage tax. Yeah. Everything in New York State is more expensive. So because we have mortgage tax versus a lot of other states, you have to get at least a point lower. In your rate to make it make sense. Because when you refinance, you're just looking at, all right, if my closing costs are $5,000 and I can save $200, do the math, my break even is X.
Right.
So you have to make sure that the lower payment outweighs the closing costs you're going to incur.
Exactly.
So figure at least a point.
Okay.
I would say.
So clients that, you currently have mortgages with, and you said you monitor that. Do you email them, reach out to them and say, hey, you may want to consider right now doing your refinance?
We monitor that, and I do reach out to my clients and I tell them right now is not the right time.
Right.
But we're watching this. We're getting close. And then we try to communicate with, all right, if rates get to X, then that may be our opportunity to refinance and save $200, $300 a month.
And that's when you're going to get real busy.
And we got to make sure that the juice is worth the squeeze, meaning what their payment's going to be versus closing costs, and do they foresee themselves staying in that house?
Right. That's I think is the key.
Right.
Right.
If they say, oh no, we're moving next year, then
there's no point.
Not worth it.
Yeah. Definitely. Yeah. Okay. So home prices are expected to rise. I don't even want to say it, 4.1%. Right? Yeah. Are we in agreement with that?
That's
right.
I would say between 4 and 5. Yeah, definitely.
What does that mean for buyers and affordability and the cost of waiting?
Cost of waiting, as we touched on briefly, is you definitely got to pay a price. The only benefit that I could say is rates go down. Right now, say they're in the mid sixes, say they go down to the mid fives. So you buy a house for 500,000, you get your 4.1%, and that goes to 510. But at 510, even if rates go down to say 5.5 or 5%, that house is actually cheaper on a monthly basis in terms of the payment.
Interesting.
So I did some math.
Yeah.
So on a $500,000 house at say 6.5, the principal and interest is $2,844. That fast forward a year from now that $500,000 house is 510, principal interest goes to $2,600. So you save $250 a month.
Right.
Even at 5% goes to $2,464. So anywhere mid fives, low fives, even though that house appreciated in value, the payment gets cheaper. So the affordability issue with lower interest rates will definitely help that.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of people are out there, and it's a tough market because prices keep going up and they're paying higher than ask. But lower interest rates could definitely help with that affordability issue.
And that was the cost of waiting. We talked a lot about that. We have the number one new construction team, in the Capital District. And, we said, well, we're just shopping around, or maybe 2 or 3 months, right? So what is the cost of waiting, right? Everything was going up. We saw that, during COVID, escalation clauses and everything going into the new construction. Yeah. I mean, your price was locked in for 10 days.
That was it.
And that was it. And it was
10 days.
Yeah, which was scary. I mean, it was
big decisions like that in that short of time.
It is. Some of the builders, did put a cap on it.
Right.
And some others were canceling, contracts that I heard around, the capital region because they were just losing money. And it, unfortunately it hurt the buyer.
Right.
Right. So that was, I never want to see that again.
You have to be cognizant of that because, whether tariffs kick in or they don't kick in.
Yeah.
Say they do kick in and builders have a real cost.
Right.
I saw something the other day. The cost of building the average house in the United States will probably go up $10,000 if some of these tariffs come in.
Right. Yeah.
Some of that might be outweighed by the fact that less regulation. So it might help builders a little bit with less regulation, which means less money for them with red tape. So we'll see. As of right now, it's projected at about $10,000. But the cost of waiting on already built homes, if you buy that house for $500,000, and you put 10% down, so you gave them $50,000. You put $50,000 down.
Right.
House goes up 4.1%. Guess what? You have $20,500 in equity.
Right.
And you already put out 50. You just made 41% on your money.
Right. And a lot of people don't, understand that. And that's where you come in.
Get that.
Right?
Right? Maybe crypto.
Yeah. Maybe.
I like real estate better.
I think that's, definitely real estate, investing in real estate. But buyers, especially first-time home buyers, and I know we're going to have you back and we're going to just do, a podcast just what first-time home buyers need to know and how you guide them. But for the average buyer, they can call you, if they have questions on this and the math, because, some of it's difficult to understand for some. And you'll walk them through that at what it looks like.
I was never a school teacher, but I feel like I am now in this business because there's a lot of first-time home buyers. Right. And I actually enjoy it because there's a lot of myths and misconceptions, especially if you believe everything that's on the internet.
Right.
And you can't believe everything that's on the internet and the parents of some of the buyers get misinformation because they bought a house 50 years ago.
Yeah, exactly.
It's changed.
Yeah.
Oh, I need 20% down. No, you don't.
No.
You can buy a house with 3% down.
Right.
You can buy a house with 0 down.
Yeah, and a lot of people don't know that. They think, they just, my daughter, is 25 and, she's saving, and I keep telling her, just put all your money in the bank. Yeah. She's not ready to move out yet. She's almost done with nursing school, but, your kids, right? What are you telling them? Just save, keep your credit good and, it just sets them up for a good opportunity in the future.
Yeah, I think the younger generation now is much smarter than the boomer generation.
Yep.
Where things got crazy, like the early 2000s, 2004, 2005.
Yeah.
Things were crazy. People buying the biggest house they could. You had crazy mortgage programs like interest only You have 4 payment options every month on your house. They're buying these mega houses that they can barely afford, plus the jet skis, the snowmobiles, the fast cars. Then the market crashed in 2008, 2009.
Yep. Which we both lived through.
Right.
Right.
And I think everybody got their head screwed on straight after that.
Yeah.
And now you have a good generation of savers. They're not extravagant. They focus on a balanced life. And so they're, they play hard, they work hard. They may not work 100 hours a week, which I respect in a way because, that's the way I'm built and I'm not going to change at this age. So I think the younger generation has less toys. They have less debt. Student loan is probably the only headwind that I see because I don't see a lot of credit card debt. I don't see a lot of personal loans, just the student loan thing because college got so expensive. But I think that's actually part of the reason why builders, they stopped building in 2008, 2009. Yep. I think a lot of the housing shortage today was caused by 2008, 2009. They stopped building.
They stopped building.
They're behind the 8 ball. They didn't want to build. And then, they finally were starting to catch up, and then COVID hits. And that put them back again.
That was.
So, I mean, I read something the other day. I think we need to build 1.9 million houses a year.
To keep
up. And right now we're only 1.3 million. So once again, even on new construction, there's a shortage of what they can do. Yeah. Not just resale.
Yeah. And even, I don't want to go down, a whole nother road, but the red tape, right? You can't make land. There's only so much land. And then the new, wetland delineation, that regulation that came in January, which is, prohibiting builders, they could have a community to offer, 70 home sites. Right. And now they can only do 30. Right. Because of that. So, that's a huge impact as well. So it's
change. I know the current administration is trying to get rid of a lot of red tape in California, specific with the wildfires. So you wonder if they can release that red tape so they can start building, if that will flow, to the rest of the country.
To the rest.
I have a lot next door to me. It's been vacant since I moved in 20 years ago.
Really?
And there's wetlands sporadically. I don't know how you build a house there.
You may not be able to.
Right.
That could be why it's, because you're in a great neighborhood. Why? I mean, if that land probably could be built on, somebody would have built
acre and a half in Clifton Park. Yeah. With only 8 houses on the street. It's a very desirable location.
Yeah. They'll be interested. I'll have to tell my bosses to take a look at it. No.
I bet you that
they'll know the wetlands, right? They'll look at it and be like, nope, you can't do anything there. Or be a tiny house.
Right. Well, there's restrictions on that too in the neighborhood.
Yeah.
But we look at the millennials, and I prepared for your little podcast.
Yeah. Well, that's wonderful, right? Notes are good. Notes are good.
I want to talk about this housing market because this what's going on right now isn't going to change. Like, this is, I think, the new normal.
It is.
And in a good way, when you buy or invest in real estate, you're going to be rewarded pretty nicely. Yeah. So if you can buy now, or buy any time, even when rates go down, you'll be in good shape. So right now, boomers, out of the boomer generation, 74% of them own homes. So that's kind of, let's use that as an occupancy rate.
Okay.
Right? Just because they're the generation ahead of us. Millennials, 45% of them own homes. And the average age of a millennial is 35. So there's 73 million millennials. Only 45% of them own a home. So if you use those same statistics as boomers, 74%, over the next 10 years, you're going to need another 8 million homes just for the millennials. So now we have the Gen Zers. Gen Zers, believe it or not, are not that far off the millennials. There's about 69 million Gen Zers. Only 8% of them own homes. But the average age of a Gen Zer, it's 20.
Right.
So in the next 10 years, they're going to need 17 million homes. So you got 17 million Gen Zers. You have 8 million of the millennials. I'm not going to say 25 million because people are going to move in together. They're going to marry. Unfortunately, some people are going to pass. If you use those factors and you shrink it down, you're still going to need 18 to 19 million homes over the next 10 years.
Yeah. Just to keep,
So someone says, I want to wait. If you can buy now, I wouldn't wait. This is statistics. This isn't made up projections. This
Yeah.
is
This
real
is,
data.
yeah. And you're very good at that. I mean, even now, guys, if anybody, has any questions and looking to buy a home, call Drew, right? He'll get you on the right path, right? Right now, like, this is what you need to do in the next 6 months or 8 months.
Correct. Even if it's not right now for you,
Right.
maybe financially, maybe socially, maybe in your family situation, whatever, at least you have a conversation.
Right.
Kind of make a plan.
Right, exactly. Having a plan so when they are ready, now they don't have to wait another 8 months.
Yeah.
They've spoke to you,
Right.
and this is what you need to do to prepare. So that is, I encourage everyone, to call you.
You don't want to be stressed out about buying a house. I mean, it's stressful enough.
It is.
It's
Yeah.
your biggest purchase, your biggest asset for a lot of people. And I just like people to go into it and with confidence. I want them to feel good about it. I want them to make an offer and you should never lose sleep over your mortgage payment.
Right.
Right?
Right.
You should
Yeah.
know what your parameters are at least. And if you have credit issues, we can fix them.
Get all that out of the way.
You know what?
Yeah.
There's no pressure. No one's holding a gun to your head.
Yeah.
You buy when it's your time. But, if you have money saved and you have low debt and you're going to stay here, throw down some roots, I think buying right now in this environment
Yeah.
is a home run. I think that neon sign
Yeah.
is flashing.
It's flashing. Buy now. Buy now.
Right, because, rates go to 5.5. It's just going to get worse.
Yeah.
The only thing I could hope for, and this is, a lot of experts predict this and hopefully it comes true, there's a lot of people sitting on 3% interest rates, right? From COVID, 3, 4, 2.5.
Yep.
And no one wants to give up that rate for 7.
Nope.
But if rates go to 5 or 5.5, all right, I have a tremendous amount of equity in my house. I can give up to 3 for 5 or 5.5.
Right. Right.
And maybe you'll start to see some people
Yeah.
putting their houses up for sale because they can take a big down payment, put it on their next house, and really not see much of a difference on a monthly basis.
And you have people that are selling, they've had, their family has expanded. So there's your move up buyer.
Right.
But then you have people that retire, they're empty nesters and they need to right size.
Right.
Right. So I think you'll see a lot of that. I know, I tell my agents all the time, call your clients and do an equity assessment, checkup for them.
Right.
A lot of people don't know the equity, that they're sitting on.
Right.
So when that time comes, they're ready to go.
Yep,
So
100%.
yeah.
I see it a lot with you get some buyers or some sellers don't want to list the professional real estate agent. They want to sell on their own.
On their own, yeah.
And I've been doing this 30 years. I can swear to you, I'm not just saying this because you're here. Those are the worst transactions I've ever involved in. It's either that they have this emotional thing and they price it way too high, the house doesn't appraise, or what's worse is they price it way too low and they leave tens of thousands of dollars
on the table. Yeah.
Because they don't know.
Yeah.
They really can't appreciate what's going on in today's market.
Right. Right.
So, and I think that's good for anybody that buys today. And you have a real estate agent to help you price it out, look at comps, look at factual data, then you negotiate.
Yeah.
Obviously, you're not just, making pie in the sky.
It's interesting. And we had an agent list a property last week. We were talking about her earlier. We love her, Angie. And the house went on the market. The seller wanted more money because a friend had told them. And we're like, we don't want to do that. You want to price the house for what it's worth because the buyer's agent's going to run comps. Right. And we said, probably 99.9% people are going to overbid to where you want to be because there is no inventory. Right. Can I tell you the sellers had to pack up and leave for 4 days? The showings, it was non-stop. It's like they were out of their house the first day from 9 a.m. to 9:30 p.m. Where do you go for that long, right? Friends, families, you can have breakfast, lunch, dinner. At some point you're like, I just want to go home. And they said, that's it. We're out of here. We're taking off for a couple days. So, it was great. And did it go multiple offers? Absolutely.
Right.
And then they were thrilled.
Ends up going higher than the list price anyway.
Yeah.
Kind of gets the seller what they were hoping for.
Right.
And it was a competitive market.
Yeah. And they had the equity, which was great. And they knew what that was prior, to listing is, we came in and educated them on that. So that's a fun.
And then you got a lot of people out there right now that are sitting on homes with no mortgage.
Yep.
So the affordability factor doesn't even play.
Right.
Now, if you're buying a house for cash.
Yeah. And there's a lot of them out there.
Afford?
There's a lot of them out there. A lot of, you're like, and,
you don't need a mortgage, which is terrible.
Yeah. And there's some young, I don't want to say young, but, early 30s and, they're cash buyers. We're like, what did I do wrong when I was in my 30s?
Crypto. I know an 18-year-old that's a millionaire.
Really?
Because of crypto.
Wow.
He blew off college and he was, in his room and going nuts with all that stuff that I don't understand. And at 18 years old, has $1 million in the bank. So I think part of that is... Maybe
we need to sit down with him.
I know. I agree.
I'm not ready to retire though yet.
I can't even talk about that because I really have zero interest.
Right, in retirement, right?
Oh, yeah. Zero.
Yeah.
Zero. I love what I do. I built this up for 30 years. I love the repeat clients. I love talking to people. I do not like sitting in an office. I'll admit that. But talking to people, getting rid of the myths and misconceptions,
right.
Helping people through this housing market, which is not easy. This is not for faint of heart, because I think first-time home buyers get discouraged. They look at 1, 2, 3, 4, 6 houses and they get outbid. So I try to pull all the levers that I can, make their pre-approval, get them a commitment letter, give them a cash
guarantee,
help them write the offer with their agent better. All the things that we can do, be creative as possible to get them that house.
Yeah. And like you said earlier, having the right team in place, right down to your agent, to your mortgage lender, to your attorney, to your home inspector, and also the agent on the other side.
Correct.
You know if it's going to be, a smooth, transaction. And that helps, especially in this market and especially a first time, home buyer where everyone is kind of holding their hand and guiding them through, the process. So, Drew, with that, is there anything else that you'd like to add before we wrap up?
Basic 101 in this environment, get pre-approved. That's
absolutely
basic thing. If I have one thing to hang my hat on today, is get pre-approved, because you have to be prepared. You're going to be competing against other people, and you want all your ducks in a row. Alleviate the stress. Know your parameters, so you can buy that house for $250 if that's your limit, or you can buy that house for $400 if that's your limit. And the seller's agent, oftentimes in this environment, will call me and make sure that my buyers are solid.
Right.
So in order to do that, hey, gather your pay stubs, W-2s, bank statements. Let's go through the gamut, take the pressure off, and just know your parameters, get your ducks in a row.
Yeah. And even if you're not ready to buy, for the next year and a half, they should call you, right? We talked about that earlier. Let's see if there's anything that might have popped up on a credit report that you didn't know about. So everything can get, taken care of now. You guide them down the right path.
The programs, alleviate the myths.
Yeah.
They get it right from me. My phone's on 7 days a week. They call or text, Saturdays, Sundays, nights, doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And it's an easy process, takes 10, 15 minutes. It's not.
Yeah, no, it is very, I've worked with you for how long? It is, what's our rule? If I text or call you and you don't answer, you have 15 minutes to call me back, or that's it. I'm done. And you always do. Which I think one time you were in the air. And I was giving you a hard time. I'm like, where are you? Yeah. I'm on a plane. I can't talk to you right now. So Drew, we want to have you back, obviously. We can talk about first time home buyers, investment properties, whatever you want to talk about. So when we're done here, we'll make sure that we get that scheduled.
Sounds good.
All right. Good. So that's it for Real Talk. No fluff, just facts. And we'll catch you the next time. Thank you, Drew, for having you. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thanks for tuning into this week's episode of Real Talk with Sterling Real Estate Group. Make sure to subscribe on your favorite podcast platform so you never miss an episode. If you have any questions about real estate or topics you'd like us to cover, we'd love to hear from you. Reach out to us at info@sterling518.com.